Hello, everyone. I'm sorry for the last minute change of plans. So this is a recording, and hopefully I'll be able to join you for a question and answer session after we finish. But I did want to make sure I at least got some content to you. I apologize. I have a sick child at home. Uh, but let's get started. So today we're looking at license terms in Primo and how they help us in ILL to make good lending decisions. So if you don't know me, I'm Amy Chu. I am the interlibrary loan librarian and a reference librarian here at Valdosta State University. I've been here since 2017 as a reference librarian, and when Denise Montgomery left in 2018, I took over her position as the head of ILL, and I love it. So I have always loved resource sharing, and prior to coming to Valdosta, I was an ILL borrowing and an acquisition specialist at CU Boulder. I've also been the chair of the GIL ILL subcommittee since July 2019. So here is the not so good news. 40% of USG libraries are still auto-deflecting electronic copies in some form. I did go through the policies directory and just looked at everybody and spent some time figuring out what we're saying no to as a consortium. And a lot of it is electronic journals, copies from electronic journals, and most of it is copies from ebooks. And I understand, I know why libraries decline to fill from electronic resources. Um, if we're not licensed, obviously, if we're not allowed to send it, then we won't. It's difficult sometimes to keep track of all these licenses. We might be cautious about supplying. We've all heard about bad things that happen when copyright runs fast and loose. And sometimes license terms can be pretty unclear. You find yourself, when you can track down a license term, staring at a wall of text and trying to find the relevant ILL information. So until recently, VSU was among these libraries. I'm ashamed to admit that we just deflected any e-content that came our way without even looking at it. It just went right on to the next library. Uh, so what were our reasons for deflecting? There wasn't an easy way to view our licenses until recently. We just had them in multiple places. Some were hanging out in Alma, some were in Coral. They were not viewable in the catalog, and it wasn't easy to track them down. And that's kind of just also what we'd always done. And frankly, there wasn't the technological know-how to actually make these changes. Like the person before me and myself, I didn't know exactly how to get rid of these deflections in the catalog. So I really had to make sure I went and learned how to do that. And we're an Iliad library. There's lots of good documentation from Atlas and from OCLC. So I looked there and made some changes. But what changed? What gave me the empowerment to make that change was learning about those things. And I do think it's so important in ILL to make sure you're staying in touch with other ILLers. So obviously, sessions like this, being able to get together with all of you is wonderful because after I'm done talking at you, we're going to have an opportunity to talk together, and that's just my favorite part. But, you know, there is great content out there that's available for you to stay in touch with people in the resource sharing community. The ILL listserv from OCLC is great. A lot of people use that too if they're just absolutely stumped trying to find a lender who can send them an item, and sometimes get lucky, and that's a good resource. The ILLers Facebook group there's great conversations going on there all the time. The Iliad Community Center is good. The OCLC Resource Sharing Community Center is wonderful. Lots of good info there. And then more Georgia related, there's the GLA ILL Interest Group. And so that's a good thing to be a part of, to stay in touch with other Georgia folk, and the GIL ILL subcommittee too. So we meet monthly and talk about our USG related ILL stuff. So but yes, so being involved and staying in touch with other ILL libraries will just it's helpful, right? We already share resources with each other. We might as well share our brains too and just make it as easy on each other as possible. So being involved with all that stuff and learning and being just engaged helped me make these decisions and helped me learn what I needed to learn to make those decisions. And the big thing, though, is that we finally have clear, viewable license terms just right there in Primo. They're easy to view and they're easy to interpret, and we'll take a closer look at some of those in a minute. But it did not happen overnight. This has been the work of many people. Before I was even ever involved with it, the ILL subcommittee was working on getting license terms out for Galileo license content. And so back in April of 2018, they sent out a list, just a document with these separate licenses spelled out. And it was kind of, it was good, but it wasn't comprehensive, and it was a document that you had to go back and forth and check on. So there was always the idea from that point even that we wanted to take advantage of what Alma had to offer in terms of getting that licensed content in there. But it took some time, and after several discussions in October, November of 2019, I got together with another member of the ILL subcommittee and the past chair, the acquisitions ERM chair. So that's Jessica Lee, who's also here at Valdosta State, and you'll be hearing more about her because she's a rock star at this. And Trisha Clayton, who is the OPAC chair. We all got together and worked on what we would like to see in Primo. We knew there needed to be like a commonality of language. We knew it needed to be fairly simple looking. It couldn't be overwhelming. That's definitely why we wanted to include the OPAC committee in there, because it would be there in the patron-facing catalog, and we wanted to make sure it wasn't going to overwhelm students with information that they just didn't need to have. But we did, we got there, and you'll see that in a minute. And so once we got there and we decided, okay, yes, this could work, we submitted it to the OPAC committee and they approved it. And then in January of last year, we presented it to RACL and they approved it. And with some hard behind the scenes work by GIL employees, the first Galileo license terms appeared in Primo last March, which was wonderful and exciting. And we should have talked more about it then, but as you all know, things were happening in March that slowed the rest of us down a little bit. And we were all scrambling. The ILL and resource sharing community were just trying to stay afloat and figure out all these changes that needed to be made. So we're talking about it now, but here we are. So there are many benefits to having these license terms in Primo. So as I said, VSU, we had our license terms kind of squirreled away in multiple places and it was difficult to track them down. But once they are in there, they're available on a single platform. It's viewable by anyone. You don't need to adjust ALMA permissions for each ILL worker. They use clear, concise language that's easily interpretable. And the term is tied right directly to the applicable content. You don't need to wonder if you're looking at the right license for the right item. There's a small footprint on the catalog. You actually have to expand the terms to see them. They're not super obvious, and it doesn't clutter the OPAC with too much information for patrons. If they did accidentally click on it, I'm sure they would just see that and re-click on it to collapse it again. And it's not just for ILL. It gives faculty and library employees the ability to see how content may be accessed and used. So for example, faculty can look at it and see if they're allowed to use it, in a course pack, or if they can place it on course reserve. or library staff can see if walk-in users are allowed to view this content. And I don't know, maybe someone can give them a guest account. Anyway, it's there. The info is there, which is great. So here's an example. This is a journal that we have access to through Galileo and also through VSU licensed content packages. So it's included in multiple collections here. And you see they have different ranges of access. And most of these license terms have been added, not all of them, and that's okay. It's an ongoing process to get all of our other backend content added. And so you can see this is what it looks like in the catalog. That show licensing is not super in your face. It's just there. All the good information that a patron would need to see about access levels is really kind of more obvious. And then if we click that show license, it expands, and this is what these terms look like. So you can see there's information on whether or not you're permitted to digitally copy it. If a course pack is available. In this case, yes, that's allowed. Course reserve. This content is allowed to be placed on course reserve. And in some cases, you'll see, okay, so for example, down here, if we were going through JSTOR, instead of a course pack, you can use a permalink to the content. Sure, that's fine. It would get them there also. And I think most of us, rather than having people put electronic content on course reserve, would prefer them to use permalinks because that would increase usage statistics. So, but here's the goodies for us. The ILL note, in this case, it's allowed, but with restrictions. So a lot of the content does have that allowed with the restrictions. And so we included a staff ILL note field as well, and it goes on to say what those restrictions are. So in this case, it's allowed as long as it's not prohibited by the publisher and the copyright statement accompanying the material. So as long as you don't see a statement saying this can't be reproduced or yada yada, you're good to go. You can lend it out. Same with this one. It's allowed with restrictions. This JSTOR package, in regards to ebooks, only one chapter per book may be sent via ILL. That's reasonable. Okay. So speaking of ebook chapters, and so ebooks, like I said, that was the content that was most deflected. We do, though, we have the ability and the terms allowing us to lend ebook chapters. So I highly recommend everyone take a close look at what their policy directory says in terms of deflections, and take a look and see if you're deflecting ebooks and reconsider it, because our Galileo licensed ebooks largely let us lend chapters within reason. So in this case, this is the ebook central Academic Complete. So this is the ProQuest hosted ebook platform, and the ILL note is allowed with restrictions, and the staff note says, with respect to ebooks, copying is limited to small portions of a book. And so how you want to interpret that would be up to you, but usually when you're looking at an ebook in a platform, it tells you how many pages you're allowed to download or save or print or copy. In this case, this is the EBSCO hosted platform, allowed with restrictions, and it has that note again about as long as it's not prohibited in a copyright statement. Now, with ebooks, you would see a copyright statement probably at the end of the title page. So behind the verso of the title page is where that would appear. And as long as it doesn't say, it can't be reproduced, then you're good to go. You could lend from this. So everyone should have those Galileo terms available to them. If they are not showing up, somebody had to actually go in and turn them off. So if you go to Primo and you search for something, go to GilFind, search for something, and aren't seeing any license terms show up when it says Galileo content is there, definitely talk to somebody about it. And if you see Galileo content there, but you're seeing your university's license content doesn't have those license terms available, it might be time to have a conversation with some people to make that easier for you and for your faculty and for your other library employees. So, people you'll probably want to include in that conversations are acquisitions and electronic resources librarians, basically anyone who is negotiating licenses with vendors and maintaining and updating that content. Your local ARMLA guru, someone who has the permissions to actually make all these changes or give permissions to other people. And then other library employees who are interested in what the license terms have to offer. So if you have someone who handles course reserves, they might be interested in being included in what language there is in terms of whether or not something's allowed to be placed on reserve. So it is a collaborative process. It's going to take you some time, but I do have some resources here that can help them with this. And I will say, I am almost entirely relying on my fantastic colleagues to put in this effort on my behalf because I do not know the back end of Alma at all. And so, it's just so important, especially in ILL. Our, what we do kind of touches every aspect of the library. We have to have good relationships with our acquisitions folks and with our e-resources people, with circulation, because they're going to be handling our materials and et cetera, et cetera. Reference people need to know how to point people to ILL and how to make a request. And so the better you can collaborate with the people in your library, the better the end result is going to be for you. So Jessica Lee, like I said, is fantastic. She really spearheaded this effort to get these terms in place. She found examples from the University of Washington that we used it as a guide, and she did a presentation in the fall that was originally scheduled for last spring about the more technical side of getting these license terms in place. And so there's a recording and the slides are available here. So I strongly recommend you share this with your e-resources acquisitions, Alma librarians. So they have all this great info available to them about just how to do this step by step. She also created a wiki on license terms on the Gill Acquisitions wiki page, and that's accessible here. And then Ex Libris also has several pages about license terms in Alma. As far as negotiating license terms go, we in ILL definitely want to have that conversation with our acquisitions people, that when they're negotiating packages and journals and our electronic content, that we want the ability to lend via ILL included in there. And to that note, RUSA recently adopted standardized language that would be helpful for negotiating those terms. And so what I really like about it is this last sentence, that requests may be filled using all these things, including but not limited to the prevailing technology of the day. And that's just such an important phrase because it doesn't limit us to a certain type of software. So you might find if you're looking at older licenses that it says something about it can be securely lent through Arial. And so hardly anyone uses Arial anymore, if at all. So the fact that it says the prevailing technology of the day is helpful because it doesn't limit us from changing and adjusting our workflows. And then ILLiad libraries, I wanted to point out that ILLiad has such wonderful add-on options, and so you're probably already aware of this, but there is a Primo new UI add-on that you can put into your ILLiad interface, and I'll show you what that looks like. And just see right there from within your lending request whether or not you're able to lend a piece of content. So that's helpful. Okay, so let's do a demo so you can see this all in action. And if you are, let's see, I'm just going to copy that and go back to our library homepage. Our books and journals tab is where GillFind is found, and so I'm searching for the title of that journal. and going there. You don't have to sign in to see any of this. Anyone can see these terms. All you have to do is click Show License, and it'll expand it and give you that language. So I think I said, so this is Galileo license content. You can see that right there. This is VSU license content. And so we tried to really mirror the same language that was used just to make it easier for everyone. And the same formatting. So this is also that Galileo content. Easy peasy. You can see what's allowed. You can see the date ranges. And so it empowers you. If you get a request, you can take a look at the year, find it in the date range, see whether or not this is allowed to be lent. So it's helpful. Okay, let's take a look. For those Iliad libraries, I want to show you just an example of a request here. So I just plopped this through the education treatment of children. Once you get that Primo UI add-on added, and if you have any questions about that, feel free to pester me because I just did it and it was super easy. And here it is. And you can set it up. Sorry, it already did the search. You can set it up to search automatically the title, or you can have it search an ISSN. There's options within the add-on. Let me see if I can bring that over here actually. So in Iliad, if you go to System, Manage Your Add-ons, the Primo one is here. And so you can choose which one it's going to search by. And I preferred the title over the ISSN because in our content, not every ISSN will link to both the print journal and the e-journal. So the title is, in my opinion, the better choice here. But then, so this is within the platform, still within Iliad. And then we can see our content here. Now, if we click one of these links, it'll open up a Microsoft Internet Explorer request. So hopefully Iliad will eventually move away from Explorer being their default. I think they're working on it. But anyway, it opens up and you can get to it there, or you can go take whatever route you prefer. You might want to grab the article title and drop it into Discover and take a look for it there. But you can see right away if you're able to lend it. So I just think it's a great tool to have. So if everything goes right and I'm available and we can talk some more, I'll be there. And if not, I'm going to give our host some discussion questions and you all can talk amongst yourself. But hopefully I'll be able to meet up with you all and talk with you. But thanks for listening to this part of it. Get in touch with me, ACHEW at valdosta.edu, or my colleague Jessica Lee at valdosta.edu. Either of us would be very happy to answer any questions that you have about using this tool. It's so wonderful, and thank you to everyone who was involved in getting this in place for us. All right.